Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Grow Well series. This is the first episode in a series of four all about growing well, hosted by myself, Julia Watson, and the Botanic Gardens Australia and New Zealand network, which represents over 90 botanic gardens and arboreta across Australia and Aotearoa, New Zealand. We're very excited because May is Botanic Gardens Month. We're leading into Botanic Gardens Week, which is the 18th to the 24th of May. And the theme this year is where your health grows. It's all about your social health, your mental health, and your physical health. And we encourage you to visit your local botanic gardens and check out the amazing events that are happening throughout the month, and especially during Botanic Gardens Week. And also to take the challenge. There's an amazing challenge where you can go to your local botanic garden and do a wonderful well-being prescription, whether it's a walk or a movement in the botanic gardens itself, like yoga or stretching, or just going for a lovely walk in the botanic gardens, and you can be in to win some amazing prizes. But this whole month is about growing your health, and our series is a four-part series, all meeting with experts right across botanic gardens. And today I'm with Peter Dawe. Peter Dawe is the lead for the Youth Community Greening Program at the Botanic Gardens of Sydney. And Peter runs a fantastic program right across the area, and we're going to be finding out more about that today. So welcome, Peter.
Thank you, Julia, and it's a pleasure to be part of the Botanic Gardens Week this year.
Thank you so much. We're so excited to have you in the series. And I've long been an admirer of the greening program, community greening program. And I'd love you to tell us a little bit about the Youth Community Greening Program.
I guess I probably should start with how it began. And initially, it started with the Community Greening Program, which was a partnership between, at the time, the Department of Housing, which is now the Department of Community and Justice, and the Botanic Gardens of Sydney. The Department of Housing funded the program and then continue to do so, and we're very fortunate that they've committed to another 5 years from now. And they provide funding so our community greening team can go out into right across New South Wales into social housing areas and set up community gardens, and then work with the tenants from social housing areas to provide support, get them out into the garden, get them out of their units. It's a great opportunity for them to work and get to know with other people, grow fresh food, and the team get out there and ensure that happens. So they've to date, I think they've worked with over 600 communities across the state and going up all the time. So it's been an amazing initiative. I guess as a result of that, back in 2008 or leading up to 2008, it was seen that a lot of young people were getting involved in these community gardens. And so the Youth Community Greening Program was born. Not quite as lucky with the funding area. So funding comes from a variety of sources, and it's probably a good opportunity to mention now that the Foundation and Friends of the Botanic Gardens of Sydney are actually doing an financial appeal to raise the money for the Youth Community Greening Program through the month of June. So it's an opportunity to contribute to the program, if you like, and help us to expand and work with more young people across the state. But basically, the Youth Community Greening Program is funded to work with young people who are less privileged, less advantaged across the state, and that often that's within schools. It could be in preschools, in migrant support units or youth centres, even youth justice centres. And basically anything to do with plants, we get out there and we join in the fun and get the kids involved in the environment, getting their hands dirty and just feeling good about being in the garden and in green spaces.
Amazing. Well, it's so important, our youth, and we know that mental health is such a complex issue and a real one for our youth in this day and age. It'd be great to hear from you about how you're seeing that happening with the youth that you work with, and the impact that actually working with plants and being in green spaces for their mental well-being. What sort of impacts are you seeing? What are some of the outcomes of the program from a mental health perspective?
Yes, I think the team are really lucky that we get to see these benefits every day when we're working with these young people. So basically, just to get the kids, sometimes some of our young people aren't meant to be sitting in a box all day, especially when we're talking about schools. So to get them outside, you can just see their whole demeanour change when they're walking into a garden, as opposed to sitting on a chair and doing their times tables or whatnot. You can get out into the garden and they just relax and they just feel they can't help. They mightn't know they're feeling better, but they just feel good about themselves. I think we can there's a distinct correlation between plants and people, and we can see that if we see a plant that's struggling, we look at different ways that we can help that plant and provide a nurturing environment for it to grow and come back to good health. And we'll look at different ways to do that. I think sometimes we don't always look at different ways to help young people who might be struggling. And I think getting them out into the garden is certainly a good way to do that. And we see it time and time again.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that about nurturing a plant and how do we nurture our people. And I imagine that there's a really nice kind of social element and physical as well, like getting moving, getting to meet each other. Do you see that happening where actually relationships are improving and even those social skills and even just movement, like you said, not sitting in a school and sitting at your desk? Like, what are some of the social and physical benefits that you're seeing as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's an amazing amount of social. I mean, it's we understand, and we who work in gardens, the benefits of being in green spaces, even just smelling, the soil and getting out there and soil after rain. You can't help but feeling good because it actually has a physical impact and forces you to feel good, even if you don't want to. The great thing about working in garden programs is it's so inclusive. So the, you might have the star of the classroom who gets everything right in the tests and answers all the questions, or the kid on the football field who scores all the goals. But in the garden, everyone's equal. Everyone's got great ideas. Everyone can look at how can we fix up this compost station, or how can we potentially attract pollinators to the garden. So they all have a voice and they all come up with amazing ideas. I think one thing that I particularly have noticed over a number of years in the program is that particularly our First Nations youth have an inherent connection to the land, and they might be a really quiet student, but then some of their ideas that just come out just through connecting to the soil and seeing a space, they're almost like ecological principles that we might understand, but they have this inherent understanding of how something might work better and how the flow of the garden should be and how it might feel better done this way. And it's really amazing to see. And then when we act on their ideas, they gain so much confidence out of that, which is also amazing.
That's wonderful. It's must be very empowering for young people to see if they've had something to share and then it actually comes to life in front of their eyes. And I wonder, have you seen outcomes in, for example, their school attendance or any of those kinds of outcomes in the rest of their life that have possibly come from being involved in a program like this?
Yeah, we certainly we see lots of outcomes like that. So it is difficult in one hand because we've worked with, I think, over 700 sites across New South Wales. So it, it's difficult to try and keep the program growing and keep going back to these sites and schools and youth centres and whatnot. But we try and do that as best we can. I know that we recently did a program where we worked with I think it was 16 high schools right along the coast of New South Wales, and we worked with disengaged Aboriginal youth on programs where they had to design a space within the school, and primarily they were cultural learning spaces, and then we stepped them through actually designing it and then developing and creating those spaces. And I know one of the principals actually commented on the fact that when the Botanic Gardens are there, we have 100% attendance, 100% attendance from the students involved, which was amazing. We see the kids turn up and we see they're happy to be there, but we don't see what's going on outside our programs. And often some of these kids, are lucky to turn up at all, let alone sit in the classroom. So that was really nice to hear that they gained confidence and they were willing to turn up. I think one of the big comments that came out of that program as well was the fact that we gained the trust of the students, and they knew we were going to turn up and they knew we were going to say do what we say we're going to do. And I think too often young people promises don't come through, and they're left wondering about the adults in society. So it's important that we follow through on what we say we're going to do. Another good comment, I think, was I just assumed that we were helping them build a garden, but they said that we helped them build a connection to the garden and a connection to the school, which was really important as well, because some don't look upon their school too favourably as well. And when they get to have an input into how the school looks, and then they can even use that space to the way they want to use it. For example, they might feeling disengaged, or they need to regulate their behaviour a bit, and then they're allowed to go to that space and sit in that space. I think that gives them, I guess it gives them a sense of purpose, and they're grateful that they've helped create it and then use it.
Right. Yeah. I love that sense of connection. And I imagine also being able to see themselves in it, represented in it. I think a lot of youth feel unheard and unseen. And it sounds
Yes.
like your program is really helping them feel heard and seen and part of something, and not hidden, or feel like they're lesser, citizens in a way.
Yeah.
And that's incredible. And it's amazing how this is all through plants, right? Like, it's actually
Yeah.
about growing plants. And I think we forget sometimes the power of plants and the
Mm.
power of getting your hands in the soil and putting plants into a garden together. And you don't have to be sitting across from each other trying to have a conversation. You're busy with your hands, and that can be often really enjoyable for young people who maybe find other forms of learning and schooling more confronting. This hopefully shows some kind of, I imagine you see some relaxation. Do you see that when the young people come to this program, they might arrive a little bit tense, but then do you notice that after the session there's like they're a bit more chilled afterwards?
Yeah, I mean, funny you should say that, because just one particular school just jumped straight out at me. Last year, I was invited to come along to a school that I had been to many years previously, but and this particular high school is known to be one of the toughest schools in Sydney, and it likes that reputation. Well, the students certainly do, and they like to let you know that when you arrive as well. And the idea was to take a group of kids that were really, really struggling in the classroom. There was only supposed to be about 8 of them, and we were going to create a space. And we decided we were going to build a frog pond and a garden surrounding that pond. When I turned up, there was about 25 of them, and I think some of them wanted to get out of maths or English, and they decided to join in. And I was thinking, how are we going to dig a frog pond with 25 students who clearly just want to be there to be out of class? And it was funny. It took about 2 hours to dig a small hole with these 25 students, whereas if I had one student, I probably could do it in 15 minutes. And then we dug the hole, and then all of a sudden the pond came together, and I think they all stood back in absolute shock. They were just thought they didn't really believe that they were, excuse me, going to make a frog pond. I think they were just out there to have a good time and muck around a little bit. And then when they stood back and they saw the pond, and then they saw the garden around the pond all looking nice, they were absolutely shocked. And then it was like, well, what are we doing next? So the next time I came back, the same kids were there, and they were completely different. They were just ready to go, saying, "Okay, Pete, what are we going to do today? Let's rip in." Now we're working on a corridor right along the edge of the school, because there's a train line going there. And they're there every week. We're propagating plants. It's just amazing. When once they, I think, and this is the issue with teachers as well. They're to teach their students, not all of them obviously, in the class, and and they might try to take them out occasionally, but it ends up in disaster, so they don't want to do it again. But you just need to persevere that little bit, get them over the edge, and then they realise that outside can be another classroom, and then they can learn, potentially more. So yeah, it's always great to see those things occur.
Amazing. That's a fantastic story. I could just picture it. And what it made me really think about as well was the long-term impact of these kinds of programs, that it's not always measurable, that actually you might have changed someone's life in terms of their career choices post school. They might not have thought of, well, maybe I can do landscaping, or maybe I can be creative, or perhaps I'm better at project management than I thought, or whatever it might be. I'm not sure. But it's really interesting because it's a seed that you're planting almost with these students that then possibly blossoms later at a different point. And I think it also speaks to the value of Botanic Gardens, that here, the Botanic Gardens of Sydney and your funders are investing in something that has really long-term dividends, that's actually having an impact on our society. And you have this core, which is the Botanic Gardens of Sydney, but you're going out into these schools and into these areas. So it's even exponentially increasing the value of what Botanic Gardens of Sydney is doing through this community greening program and then out into our society. It'd be interesting to hear from you what you think about that in terms of, I know you said there's some funding challenges, etc., but yeah, what are your thoughts about that kind of that concentric circles of influence, just even from the Botanic Gardens itself?
Yeah, I mean, there's an incredible flow on effect, because we hear about, we certainly hear about from time to time people have gone on and found themselves in employment in these areas, and that they didn't realise. That's another thing as well. We did some videos of some of the gardens we did in the cultural spaces we did, and there's some kids saying, I didn't know I could get a job doing something like this. I would love to get a job teaching young people about cultural uses of plants when I leave school and things like that. And that's just amazing to hear. Um, and it's not just the work as well. It's when you teaching kids, say, to grow a vegetable garden, it's amazing how many students aren't aware that the plants they eat, well, first they're not aware they actually eat plants, but then they eat plants that can be grown in a garden. And then the amount of times I come into school and the kids come up to me and tell me what they're growing at home now and what they're teaching their parents to grow at home now, it happens so regularly. And I remember when I first started the role, and I think I made a bit of a mistake because I worked in a school and we created this amazing veggie garden, and the principal was so happy they decided to do some media around it. So they invited the local paper and a photographer, and we came out and we were chatting away, and the photographer wanted to take a photo of all the students and myself at the garden, but they had to wait till the sun got behind a cloud. So while I was waiting, I just picked a bean and started to eat it. And this kid just looked at me and said, "Can you eat that?" And I was we can eat all of this. And like I realized that I've taught them how to grow them, but I haven't sort of taught them that you can actually eat them at the end of it. And so then we just started eating and grazing away. And then the photographer's trying to get us to stop to take a photo, but we kept eating. But so now we incorporate cooking as well into our
Oh,
programs. We teach kids how to cook. I mean, anything to do with plants at all. We might do some native dyeing or arts and craft or how whatever we can imagine really, and it's quite endless what we can do. But the getting into employment as a result of this, and the amount of variation that kids can do that. So I go into high schools and I talk about employment opportunities when they have career days and things like that, which is great fun. I say to them, it's not just about becoming a horticulturalist in the Botanic Gardens, which is a great job, but you can do all of these other things, all to do with plants. And yeah, it's a good opportunity for them.
yeah, that's fantastic. It sounds very holistic, which makes so much sense. You know, it's not just about growing the plants, like you said, it's about eating them and what you can do with them and cultural uses. And like you said, the options are endless. And I think that it's so inspiring as well that it's wonderful to promote careers that are in these green spaces, etc., and doing it through something that's so practical and hands-on and engaged and connecting, as opposed to just doing talks or going to
Yeah.
the school with a PowerPoint, for example, because this is such a wonderful way to engage different learners in different ways as well. So, and what is your favorite part of the program? If you were to say what gets you up in the morning and gets you excited about it, like what keeps you going? Because these are very intensive programs, and you've been doing it for quite a long time now. And yeah, what motivates you and keeps you going?
Look, to be honest, I can't imagine not doing it now. I really, really enjoy it. I'm absolutely privileged to be in this role. I love seeing the change, and and sometimes it's not even with just the youth, it's giving the capacity to some of the teachers and the youth workers to do these things. So I know that, once I'm not there anymore, or someone else from the team's not there anymore, then that they're going to continue with that program, and it's once again has that flow on effect. But I think probably the ones I've enjoyed the most are probably the slightly out of the box ones. Um, and then coming in after, I guess you could call disaster situations like this. You were going up to the Northern Rivers area to work with some schools, and since there's been significant flooding in recent years, going down to the south coast of New South Wales, after the fires in 2019-20, we did a big project down there at Cobargo Public School, where we redid the whole front of the school, which was basically turned to ash, and that was hugely rewarding, because the whole community got involved in that project, and I still get a bit choked up thinking about it, because we basically, at first it was just like we were putting a garden at the front of the school, but then it was so obvious that it became so much more than that so quickly, and the kids were open about that. And they were talking about their experiences with the fires and how they lost their houses, but their pets and friends, and but they were talking openly about how this was a healing process for them, and they genuinely felt that. So projects like that, they're not going to leave me at all. They're going to stick with me for a long time, particularly a few individual students who lost a lot. Um, Also, I love going into the youth justice centres, and we've got a number of programs going in, quite a few now. And some of those projects have been really rewarding. And to be honest, I go in there quite regularly, and I don't know what I'm going to go into each time, because we don't know what's happened the night before or the hour before. And I could be going in expecting to do this, but then it's been a change because something's happened, and now I've got a bunch of young people who aren't at a level where they're allowed to use shovels, for example. So I have to change. And sometimes I'll go in, and I'm lucky because the staff in there are amazing, and but the garden programs have been running for so long in there. But sometimes we'll go in and we can see that it's no point us carrying 50 wheelbarrow loads of mulch to that back garden today, because it's just not going to happen. We'll just sit in the veggie garden and just sit around and talk and graze and eat, and some of the conversations we have during those situations are quite amazing. And the teachers and the youth workers comment on the fact that they get to know those young people a lot better in those situations, and they get to understand them a bit more, which I think is really important, because it helps them to react differently, perhaps if something's not happening that should be happening, something inappropriate, and they might have a better understanding of why that behaviour is occurring. So those sort of things are really rewarding as well. But I just love playing in the garden every day.
I love that. It's wonderful to hear your passion, and I think the healing power of gardens and of plants is something that we know, and I think that more and more people are getting to see that, and through this program, you're demonstrating it every day, and it's something that a lot of us feel, and I think it's good to talk about, because we forget. Sometimes we go into a green space or a botanic garden, or a local garden, and we feel good, but we don't actually think about it actively. But actually what you're doing, and through this program, is really demonstrating the healing power, the connecting power of gardens and plants, and um, hearing your stories about the youth who'd lost their homes. I mean, that is very poignant and very touching and very, very sad. And it's really amazing to me to think that gardens and plants can play a role in healing and hope, uh, and a feeling of that I'm going to be okay. And I think that's just, yeah, it's just something, the value of plants and gardens, and especially in this age where we've got tech and AI and social media and people on their phones and their laptops so much and disconnected from nature. Where do you think this program is going, and the relevance and the importance of it now that we're seeing this exponential increase of the digital age with AI knocking at us on our doors, and and a lot of not just youth, but many of us caught up on our phones and laptops and social media. Where do you see this program playing an even more important role in that?
I, I, I think that the problem with a lot of those things is that because I think children at a young age are being handed a device as like a dummy or pacifier these days, and they've grown up with that as opposed to eating a handful of soil, which I was probably doing at the same age or whatever. I I think they're almost needed to be coerced to go out in nature so they can feel its benefits. And once they do, I think, I see a change in them. I had this boy um, at a school for students with additional needs, and we were talking about compost and we're comparing soils and compost and different things. And he said to me, the only soil I will ever touch is virtual soil.
Huh.
And I'd never heard that before. That just blew me away. And I thought, wow. But then we sifted around in the soil and I found this centipede. It was really cool. It was this olive green with a big orange head. And I said, have a look at that. Have a good close look at that. You'd be struggling to make something so wild as that in your virtual world. And then he was fascinated by it. And then, he's sifting through and he's having the time of his life looking through dirt for more bugs and things like that. I think sometimes they just need to be given an opportunity and then they'll realize it. Because that's another thing we see regularly. We'll come in and if kids are told they're going to the garden group or whatever, initially there might be some negativity around it, but it doesn't take long before that changes. Yeah,
Mm.
I think another thing that I came across. There was a lady. She was actually at the Big Ants Congress at Wellington a number of years ago, and I met her, and she was from the UK, and she's created a thing called Silent Space in the UK, and it's where different parks and that there's an area designated to switch off your phone. There's a sign saying switch off your phone, observe, relax, whatnot, and she put little notepads there, and people had to write down what they felt. And I think sometimes we just need to, get kids to just switch off. And I think reflection spaces in schools are another amazing thing. So it's unfortunately you can create this wonderful garden, but often they're out of bounds, which I prefer kids allowed to be in there and pick up sticks and whatnot. But to have these spaces where someone can just go in and just reflect and be amongst nature and observe different things that are happening there is also another really nice thing for students to do.
Yeah, absolutely, especially in the busy, noisy world that we live in, just even from a technological perspective, there's a lot going on, even if you
Yes.
can't see it all. So, and just really looking to the future, what are some of the challenges or the opportunities that you see for this program, or any, if we think about the audience who's listening, any asks you like, well, this is what we want for the future of the program.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'll use this opportunity to plug again for the end of financial appeal from the Foundation of Friends. But obviously, if we have more funding, we can create more spaces. And we do cover the state, which is it's a big area, the state of New South Wales. At the moment, we've been running online courses for remote and regional teachers, which has been really successful. But it would be great to get out and help them more often. I think some of the projects we're doing at the moment, we're going off in slightly different directions and they're a lot of fun. But I think when we're talking about in urban environments, particularly in Western Sydney, where so much of the natural habitat has just been destroyed, and there's just houses everywhere, schools are probably one of the remaining green spaces left around, or potentially, but they're not when they're new schools. So what we've been doing lately is creating some, I guess, Miyawaki-inspired tiny forests in schools. We're trying to help the problem of cooling the schools down a little bit. We're mass planting plants, but we're often doing it on heavy compacted clay soils, so it's really difficult. So we're enhancing the soil with we're using a Korean farming method. We're capturing some indigenous microorganisms, bacteria and fungi from a local healthy bushland area, and we're creating nutrient balls with the students and putting them in with each of the plants, and that's helping them. That's really been successful, and it's a lot of fun for the kids to be involved in that. They're a bit fascinated about how all that works, and it can get a bit smelly, which is always an advantage. So we're doing some tiny forests, and we're really enjoying that, or pocket forests. And also just doing a lot of habitat and biodiversity gardens and things like that. So currently on the mid-north coast of New South Wales, I'm involved with the Environmental Education Centre up at Dorrigo on creating a habitat, a corridor for a butterfly that's threatened up there. So those sort of situations, it's so much fun. We get out and to engage with all the schools throughout that corridor on the plight of this butterfly, and we plant out the vine that the caterpillars need to eat. And next thing we hear that they've talked to their parents about it and they've contacted me. How can we get more vines? And those sort of flow and effects are wonderful as well. So yeah, we're doing some fun projects like that, but we're still doing the good old veggie gardens and cultural spaces. But I think anything to get the kids outside, get them involved in planting, get them understanding the importance of plants, because it's so many reasons why we need plants and obvious reasons. So yeah, anything we can do will benefit.
Amazing. Absolutely. It's wide ranging, and it's just wonderful to hear how many different aspects you're working on, and um, there's so much opportunity, and there's also so much need, and I think there's going to become more and more need as
Yes.
we have urban expansion and obviously our changing climates. And like you mentioned, that schools are actually amazing green spaces within our communities, especially some communities who maybe don't have as many green spaces. So
Yeah.
investing in the space is fantastic. And I really applaud the Botanic Gardens of Sydney and the community greening program and the youth community greening program for the work you're doing. I think that it's just something that we need to do more and more of. But as we start to wrap up, it is Botanic Gardens Month. And we're very excited to celebrate it. And as I mentioned earlier, the theme is where your health grows. So I'd love to know, Peter, in terms of your health, physical, mental, social, what role does Botanic Gardens play in your health, and anything you want to share about what they mean, what Botanic Gardens mean to you?
I mean, I think that for myself, I'm not someone who can sit down for a long period of time. So if I'm having an office staying at the gardens, I'm up wandering around the gardens all the time because it's such a beautiful space. I think for particularly the inner city Sydney Botanic Gardens in at Sydney Harbour there, it's such an important space for so many people. And right next to the CBD, the amount of people that come into the gardens every day is just phenomenal. The traffic through there, and then probably some of them aren't aware of how important it is for them because I guess they're used to coming in, having their lunch or going for a jog through the gardens. But if it wasn't there, I don't know what they'd do, to be honest, because it's such an important green space for all those people. For me, I mean, I just even before working for the Botanic Gardens, it was just a thing to do to go to the Botanic Gardens and whatever city or town. Some of the regional Botanic Gardens are absolutely amazing, and Arboretum. So that's always on my list of things to do. To get out and check out what's going on in those spaces. And for my own mental health, I know that I sometimes I'll be working in a garden all day and I'll get home and I'll get in my own garden because it's just something I love to do. But I love wandering through the bush and getting out. If I need to make an important decision in my life, I know that I'll go wandering through the bush somewhere. It's to seek clarity to make that decision. I can't imagine walking down a busy street and trying to make an important decision. So I think all of these gardens and green spaces are such important spaces. And coming into the Botanic Gardens Week, I think it's fantastic that it's an opportunity for everyone to celebrate that and think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful to hear about how you really value that. And I think again it comes back to that it's that physical well-being, even just the walking through in a natural space in the Botanic Gardens, the which then leads to the mental well-being, and then hopefully that social connection as well, seeing other people, seeing happy people as well. So it's really great to hear your experience. And Peter, thank you so much. Thank you for your work. Thank you for the Youth Community Greening Program. Big ups to the Botanic Gardens of Sydney and all the funders and supporters who are supporting this program as well. And I really recommend that everyone go and check out the Youth Community Greening Program, look at the Botanic Gardens of Sydney's website, go and support this program. And as we wrap up, I also want to wish everybody a wonderful Botanic Gardens week and Botanic Gardens month. I encourage you to do what Peter does and go out into a local green space, but definitely visit your local Botanic Gardens. Take up the challenge. You can win amazing prizes this month. All you have to do is go to your local Botanic Gardens, complete one of the challenges, just sign up. There's a very simple QR code, and get outside, enjoy your Botanic Gardens and everything that it means for your well-being. And if you also appreciate the work of Botanic Gardens, we appreciate your support. If you want to donate to BGANS, just pop onto our website, bgans.org.au. We'd love to have your support as well. But thank you to everyone who listened today. Thank you, Peter, and we wish you a very happy Botanic Gardens month. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you.